And just wanted to get something up before Halloween or whenever, because that is tomorrow. Well, right now I'm whatever. But let's talk about Halloween Havoc 1991. And I think this is going to be one of those things where we talk about the first match being the infamous Chamber of Horrors match. And this match was kind of a clusterfuck, in my opinion. I mean, it was cool. You had caskets, you had electric chair, you had a bunch of other cool things. And that was basically the thing, right? It was a very good match. But, I mean, the ending was kind of weird. But you have Sting, El Gigante, and the Steiner brothers, who defeated Abdullah the Butcher, the Diamond Stud, Scott Hall, which I thought was very cool, Cactus Jack, and Big Van Vader. And this match was very, yeah, it was all over the place, of course. And the only thing that was really infamous about it was Abdullah, who was being electrocuted, and just kind of, we didn't think he faked it or not, but I mean, whatever. It was still a good match, and it was very cool to see Scott Hall. You know, there was a point when he got the camera shot of them going through the casket and everything, and yeah, very cool match indeed. But I think one of the biggest things that you would see, well, not see rather, would be not another Chamber of Horrors match. Unfortunately, this was the first and last of this match, which I kind of get, but it was a pretty cool concept of its time. Then we take team match, got Big Josh and PN News, who defeated the Creatures. Creature 1 and Creature 2. This match was a good match. I mean, when you look at the first match of the show, you know, this was kind of like, you know, it was there. Again, I know that we mentioned it before. I'm not quite sure about these two. I had to watch it a few times, but singles match, Bobby Eaton, who defeated Terry Taylor. And this was cool as well. And Bobby Eaton, I mean, you look at his career, when you look at what he did with Stan Lane, and you think, you know, it's unfortunate that he passed away last year. And one of those things where it's like, very good take team. I'm not sure if they're really underrated. I think they could have came down to WWF at some point, but it just never really happened. I know Stan Lane had done commentary for a little while in '94, and it was a good match, and I think that definitely he's going to be missed. Terry Taylor, obviously another good wrestler, you know, going back to, I guess, the Red Rooster, and then WCW, and then of course his comeback in the early 90s in WWF, but of course being an agent, and just kind of a really good match all around. Very talented wrestlers. And then you have Johnny B. Bad, who had Teddy Long in his corner, who defeated Jimmy Garvin, and with Michael Hayes, of course, the new Fabulous Freebirds. And this match was pretty cool as well. And I mean, again, you know, I think that Mark Merrow had a lot of really good matches at WCW, and not watching the product at the time when he came to WWF as Wildman Mark Merrow, I instantly fucking knew that this guy was a WCW guy just by, you know, reading the magazines at the time. of WCW when going to stores and stuff and seeing him and going, okay. So I was familiar with Cactus Jack and Big Van Vader and Mark Merrill as Johnny B. Bad, but a very flamboyant wrestler, and basically they got a swerve and Johnny B. Bad ended up going over. So then you have two Texas boys in a WCW Television Championship match. Steve Austin with Lady Blossom. So just looking at it now, this is actually, I believe, his first wife, because I know that Steve had a wife that was from England. So yeah, I didn't know too much about that. But yeah, so Steve Austin versus Dustin Rhodes. And again, very good talent there. Two big Texas guys. And there was a point where you had a couple roll-ups. Now, this match so good, I guess. There was a time limit, and it was a draw, unfortunately. But Steve ended up retaining the title. So, very good to see these two guys in this match. Of course, this is one of the few times where I think shortly after that, Steve would cut his hair. He, of course, had, the baby face look with the long blonde hair. But, again, this is when he was beginning to get into the Hollywood Blondes later on with Brian Pillman. And it was very cool to see young Steve Austin, too. I mean, he was a guy who was more of a technical wrestler and can have 20-minute or 30-minute, whatever matches, So, I mean, that was pretty cool. You have Kazmir, who defeated Oz, Kevin Nash. And the thing about Oz is that, it didn't last too long, as far as I knew. I mean, I didn't see too many matches from him. But you look at the guy who basically was Dusty, who made the character and had him with this movie theater role, but as it was mentioned in a Stone Cold podcast. And yeah, just pretty cool, but don't know too much about Bill Kazmir, but this was an okay match. And I think, coming from that, and Kevin Nash, kind of realized that here's the guy that came in with the Master Blasters. He then went on to Oz, and then of course Vinny Vegas, before going to WWF with Diesel. So he was a pretty good character wrestler. He was a guy that, yeah, it took a long time for him to get to his real name and the new I guess, thing with WCW in the mid-90s with the Wolfpack. So now you have Van Hammer versus Doug Summers, and this was a pretty good match too. And I think that I kind of want to see more matches with Van Hammer. It's been a while, but I haven't seen too much, especially with Doug Summers. But yeah, Van Hammer kept going over in this one. And then, of course, speaking of Steve Austin, Flying Brian Pillman, who defeated Richard Morton. And this was for the WCW Light Heavyweight Championship. So, it looks here that it was vacated. Oh, it's the inaugural. Okay, so, yeah. And of course, like Steve Austin, Brian was one of the best, obviously Flying Brian, high flyers. And eventually, when him coming over to WWF, it was sort of a different style, even when he was in ECW. But yeah, this was a pretty cool match. Then we get to the Halloween Phantom and Tom Zink. And this was pretty cool as well. And I'm not sure what the premise was that led up to this match, but the Halloween Phantom ended up going over. Then you have the Dangerous Alliance. Was Paul Heyman and Medusa getting into it. When, of course, Paul Heyman cutting a promo, as only Paul can. And then you have the reveal of Ravishing Rick Rude. And again, Rick cuts a promo. So this was a really good match. And again, don't know how this match got let up, but yeah, I mean, the Dangerous Alliance was quite possibly one of the best stables of that time. And I mean, I don't know if I could say it was ahead of its time, but it was a pretty cool stable. But yeah, this was a pretty good match. You know, I think gimmick wrestlers, especially one-time gimmick wrestlers like the Halloween Phantom, that's pretty cool. We got the Enforcers, Arn Anderson and Larry Zbyszko, who defeated Todd Champion and Firebreaker Chip for the WCW World Tag Team Championships. And of course, we know Arn Anderson, one of the biggest, Four Horsemen guys with, Ric Flair, and Tully Blanchard, and J.G. Dillon, of course, a guy who went over as the Brainbusters with Tully to WWF, managed by Bobby Heenan, and then of course, a little while on AEW, but this was a good match, and of course, Arn and Larry worked well together, and winning the Tag Team Championships, so obviously that was pretty cool. It's a 2 out of 3 falls match. Got Ron Simmons with Dusty Rhodes in his corner and Harley Race in the corner of Lex Luger. And this match was pretty cool. It was one of those things where it was like you didn't know who was going to win in this match. Lex was always that physique. So was Ron. Both these guys were very good wrestlers, and it was like Lex ended up going over and winning the title, just kind of like you knew that it was a close call. And I think that a year later have Ron Simmons as the first black, or whatever you want to say, world champion, beating Big Van Vader. And so, this was just a taste of what was to come, I think. But this was a good match, and also a very good show. And I really enjoy seeing things way back then, And I'm a big nostalgia guy, and not being a WCW fan as a little kid, I'm more a WWF guy. It was very cool to see this match. And, obviously knowing about the Chamber of Horrors. But, anyways. Yeah, very good show. But, Halloween Havoc, 1991. I believe I will be going to Halloween Havoc 1994. So, anyhow, I'll talk to you later. Bye. Happy Halloween.